Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining today for another Tuesday discussion. And for today's video, I'm going to do a slightly different format somewhat. I got a bunch of questions about this, and I think we could actually turn this maybe even to a series if you dig it. So, what has occurred with this particular video? Now, keep in mind, everything that we do on Tuesdays is community generated from the comments that we get in YouTube or from Patreon or from Instagram. And one thing that does emerge from time to time is the fact that we're kind of bougie whiskey drinkers. We do drink a lot of bougie, expensive whiskey, and people are, sometimes like put off by like, oh, I can't buy that one. Like, that doesn't interest me. Well, let's spin it though. Just because we had this expensive whiskey and maybe we gave it a favorable review or a high review, that doesn't mean that there aren't comparable whiskeys that other people can find as well, either at different price points or different areas of the country. So just because you can't necessarily find something that we are reviewing doesn't mean that there aren't alternatives. And if you're interested in knowing what the alternatives are, hey, why not ask the question? We'll try to address it as we can. So on this particular video, we are going to highlight the Old Carter Rye. So this is Old Carter Batch 10. This is one of my favorite whiskeys that I've had a chance to drink this year. So let's go over some alternatives to the Old Carter Rye that I actually think are cheaper and comparable and might give you some hints on other things that you can try that'll give you a similar profile. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So I poured out a little bit of the Old Carter in a Hello Again whiskey friend, Glenn. Oh, I love these Glens. These things are so fun. So with the Old Carter, and kind of the prefaces of this entire video, once again, is somebody who asked us, hey, I can't find Old Carter in my area, nor do I plan to pay $230 for a rye. So you had this as one of your top 5 whiskeys of the year so far that you've tried. What's something I can try other than this? Like, what's an alternative? Give me other options that you find comparable and maybe tiered on price. Give me some options in my area. So hopefully the things that I lay out before you today will help show some alternatives you can have if you can't find Old Carter or you don't want to spend $230 on a whiskey, all of which is completely reasonable. So with the Old Carter Rye, these are going to be blends of Indiana ryes. So typically probably just a 95.5 rye coming out of MGP, blended. And what I hear typically is that Old Carter does toast their barrels and they toast their blends, and that adds a dynamic to it as well. So I'm going to take a sip here of this Old Carter because, oh my gosh, frankly, this batch 10 is just so delicious. I recently gave this in a blind to Darrell Kelsey and Pop 'em Don't Watch 'em. Be sure to check out Pop 'em Don't Watch 'em. He's got a YouTube channel as well, doing whiskey reviews and being an awesome wrestling fan. Cheers, everybody. Hmm. Oh, man. To me, I think this is one of the loveliest ryes that I have had thus far. It is just perfectly balanced through and through. There's sweetness, there's fruit flavors, there's a darkness to it, a little bit of oak. And I do think if it is toasted, that might explain some of the over the top sweetness. So, what we'll go over today are brands that I would recommend that you look out for. If you can't find the Old Carter, there are other brands doing very, very good things with MGP Rise. Keep in mind, this is a sourced product. So, there are other people that are offering MGP Rye at a cheaper price as well. may not be blended in the same way, may not have as old a cask in the blend. All those type of factors are coming into play that ultimately makes this a special pour. But I'm going to give some good alternatives. And there's one particular bottle that I'm going to highlight that I have never compared head to head to the Old Carter Rye that costs, gosh, 40% as much. And I'm very intrigued to see how they actually compare in a head to head fashion. And we'll do that live on this video. So let's bring up a few brands first. The brands that I'm going to highlight all are MGP Ryes, various price points. I'll describe the price points as we go through them, but I'm either trying to highlight brands that offer toasted MGP or older MGP, in which you could still get those dark notes even without it being toasted. Most of the toasted products that I do see are ranging between 5 and 7 years within the rye category. I think to get that layer of darkness and oak on it, it needs to be 9, 10, 11 years if it's not toasted. So kind of keep that in mind as we go through these recommendations. And I'm going to tier these based on price, and then we'll do that head to head comparison with one of them that I actually think, man, I think it's going to compare pretty darn close to it. I think it's a pretty special pour, but we'll see. I've never done the head to head before. So, the first brand I am going to highlight, if you got them in your area, you can find some Nulu toasted ryes. So, these are typically store picks. You can find a whole lot of these online, but they are doing toasted ryes as well. This one's a 5 year that I got in my hands. Recently killed a 6 year. I don't think I've seen one older than 6 years. They generally range from $80 to $90 in price for a toasted rye that is 5 to 6 years old. And these are very, very good toasted ryes. In general, I do think ryes actually take better to toasting than bourbons do. Um, Majority of the time, I would actually sway towards a toasted rye than a toasted bourbon. Another brand I want to highlight, they are doing lots of good stuff. I actually didn't have a toasted rye on the bar right now. So I'm going to show you a label that doesn't quite, go with the theme of the video entirely, but it kind of does. Keep an eye out for Buzzard Roost. So I know this is a cigar rye here. This is just the one that I have in the bar right now, but they do toasted ryes. They get a lot of MGP, and the unique thing about Buzzard's Roost too is that they play with the char levels a bit when they're doing the toasting. So they might do some lower char toasts as well. Man, really gets interesting with these Buzzard Roost single barrels. Now, the Buzzard Roost that I've had range from, I would say, $70 to $85 depending on the store. The last one I'm going to highlight in terms of the toasted alternatives, and this is the one that I want to do the head to head comparison with as well. I think this is a very unassuming brand. I know distribution on this particular brand probably isn't too high, but if you are in the Kentucky area, you've probably overlooked this brand and this particular bottle before. But it is a down home straight rye, as you can see up at the top, toasted barrel finish. This one is batch one. I bought a few of these. This is actually my last one. I opened it up recently to do another comparison, and this was one of the very first toasted ryes that I think I tried and I fell in love with. And I thought when I went back to this one, because I had this backup bottle, that, probably the shadow of it or the memory of it probably wasn't as good as it actually was. No, it was still fabulous. It was still one of the best toasted ryes I've ever tried. So I'm going to compare this directly to the Old Carter at the end of this video. So let's highlight a few more brands and then we'll come back to this. I'm going to pour this one out just to give it a chance to breathe before we do that comparison. And then I am pouring the down home into one of my favorite Glens. It's a frosted Glen from the Bourbon Junkies. Yeah, look at that one. I once had two of these Glens. The other one died in a very, very terrible, how should I explain it? Uh, Bottle pyramid stacking experiment. I obliterated that Glen. Holy cow. So let's go to two more alternatives. Now, those are the toasted alternatives. all of which, as you heard from the pricing, range from $70 to $90. The other ones to keep an eye out on, these you always got to check the back to see the age because, man, there's some really old stuff that can float out there. This one cost me $90. It is a Bone Snapper Rye. I've already killed one of these. Now I got the unopened one that I'm showing you here. But this was essentially a 9.5 year MGP store pick Bone Snapper Rye. So the same people that bring you Backbone, if you're familiar with this bottle shape. 90 bucks. 90 bucks. 9.5 year rye. Come on, man. And then another one. This steps up the price point a little bit, but we're still talking about some good old MGP, the Belle of Bedford. So you might be seeing these around. These are extra aged ryes. This particular one is 10 years old. Gives you those deep flavors again. You know, you're either getting those deep flavors from the rye being extra aged or toasted. That makes a big difference. So, those are five alternatives at various price points to this Old Carter that I would recommend if you're interested in getting into toasted or darker rye profiles. Let's compare this down home to this Old Carter. Now, the down home is about $80. Now, this was batch one. I haven't tried batch two. I sometimes still come across a lot of batch one. I more often see batch two on the shelves around Kentucky. But I think down home, it's just kind of a brand that people do sleep on. You know, it's a very unassuming bottle, very unassuming label. But this batch one in particular is one of my favorite ryes of all time. Let's compare it to what I think actually is my favorite rye of all time. So, cheers, everybody. We'll wrap this up in about a minute. So, in the Clear Glen is the Old Carter. Gosh, just a gorgeous, gorgeous nose. By comparison, the down home nose is more muted, less dynamic, less complex. Still very inviting, a lot of sweet vanillas. Hmm. Gosh, some good fruits going on. Man, really good pour. Let's see what these things do on the palate. I'm going to start out with the down home. Mm, man, I just think the toast on a rye sweetens it up and balances it out so much. I think the bourbons can get kind of funky when you toast them sometimes. I know I really, really love the Four-Gate 10-year CBO pick this year. I mean, that is my number one bourbon so far this year, my number one bourbon experience. So it is funny for me to have my number one as a toasted bourbon, but also trash toasted bourbons at the same time. I think toasted bourbons, though, it like de-ages them. It makes them funky. Oh, man. So sweet. Oh, all types of tropical notes going on the palate. This particular one is giving me a whole lot of mango right now. And that can happen a lot with the toasted ryes. They do turn tropical, you know, getting toasted coconut, getting the mango. Those are the type of things that can happen versus maybe those traditional, more citrus flavors that you'd expect from a rye. That toasted part of it just changes the dynamic entirely. Let's get into the Old Carter. Oh, man. Same thing going on there. Lots of tropical notes. The Old Carter, though, just has that base. It's got these deeper, darker notes, probably because there's older casks in this blend on top of being toasted, is essentially what's going on. I bet you the average age of the casks in this Old Carter are older than the down home comparison. Oh man, that depth though is what's going to separate these two. That's what you're paying for. Though, is it worth, gosh, two and a half times more? Oh, that's a deeper question. Oh, just lovely. Oh, so lovely. Oh man, top of those darker flavors. Man, there's like some maple syrup, some simple syrup, sweetness going on. There's some oak there on the back end, especially on the finish. Oh my gosh, that's a lovely rye. That is the best blended rye I have had. I swear. I love that. I love that rye. Jeezy Pete. All right, let's get this down home one last time. Ah, the down home is lovely as well. I mean, the tropical flavors that it brings out, that mango note in particular, is pretty incredible. It's got the nice long finish on it. The only thing it doesn't have compared to the Old Carter is the depth, the base, the darkness, the age, and I think it just comes down to probably the average age of the casks that were used. But if you handed me any of these, I mean, I think both of these are just particularly very, very strong ryes. Um, for 40% of the price, you would not go wrong getting this down home and feeling pretty darn good about it. But it doesn't have that depth. It doesn't have the same depth as that Old Carter. I think that's what you're paying for when it comes to that experience and coming to some of those flavors. You're paying for the depth, you're paying for the complexity, you're paying for the perfection that went into balancing that particular blend. So hopefully that helps everybody today. If you cannot find Old Carter Rye, gave you a whole bunch of alternatives that you can try instead. But man, this one right here, this batch 10, this thing is killer. And man, the more I talk about this one, people keep telling me that other batches of the Old Carter are better than this one. I don't even know how. Melt my brain. Oh my. Well, thank you for joining me today, Whiskey Friends. If you have a question, leave it in the comments. We'll get back to it in this format. If you have any other bottles that we reviewed that you want to see alternatives, be sure to comment about those as well. We can keep this format going. I think this is a good format for us to put other brands out there that are cheaper, that can offer similar experiences, and then highlight what the difference is in what you're paying for and what those scores are. So thank you for joining me today, Whiskey Friends. I'll catch you on the next Tuesday discussion. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with